by way of introduction, we're going to run this session for 90 minutes. We want to make it interactive. So this isn't just going to be us talking at you. We're going to be doing some sharing and reflecting together as part of the session. To start with, we're just going to tell you a little bit about how we set it up and what it looks like. And then my colleague Nina is going to tell you a bit about her experience of actually doing it on the ground and bring that alive by telling a story around an individual within her patch. We'll then go into 2 breakout rooms and then do some sharing. So hopefully, if you haven't already, just have a little think about an object of personal significance to you. As I said, we'll go into 2 breakout groups. And that bit won't be recorded. But if you haven't brought an object of personal significance, maybe just have a little think about something that might be in the room with you that you could, or just talk about an object. You don't have to physically have it with you. And then we'll come back very briefly into the main group for very quick reflection. And then we'll move into the skills game, which is a technique that we use in community to support and encourage members of the community to do positive things together. So it's one of the key tools that we use in our practice. So lovely to sort of see you all here, although I can only see the 4 of us and 1 or 2 other faces. Just, I suppose it's important to acknowledge our funders. So this project has been funded by the National Lottery as part of its Aging Better programme, which was set up over 6 years ago to come up with new and innovative ways to tackle social isolation and loneliness for people over 50. We were encouraged by the lottery to take an asset-based approach to this. We will put a link in the chat later on, which takes you to a number of our learning documents. And I think it's fair to say that we've learned a lot along the way. We've learned by getting stuff wrong and then reflecting on what we got wrong and improving it. So I think that the key to this is, you know, although, yeah, we've cut our teeth and we've been at this for over 6 years, we're still learning and we'll always be learning. So it's great to be sharing with you and hopefully learning with you as we carry on. So our Aging Well programme is made up of a number of elements. Half of the programme is our community building team. And I think one of the first things we learned when we originally pitched to the lottery, we had planned to host our community builders in lots of the smaller groups around our area. But when we moved to implementation, the experts in the art of, and for those of you who were in the session earlier today, you might have met Martin Simon, who's been mentoring our program for the last 6 years. They said, whatever you do, don't do that. Because the challenge of that is actually those smaller groups, community groups in those different places will all have their own culture, their own challenges, and it would be difficult to foster that sense of team and the philosophy of ABCD within lots of diverse organisations. So when we moved to implementation, it ended up being us as a community development trust that hosted our team of 15 full-time equivalent community builders who were trained in the art of asset-based community development. When I put the link in the chat later, there is an 8-page learning document with some of our learnings that we'll share with you as we go through today. I think it's fair to say that actually having one team in one organisation was really important. It can be a lonely place working in community, and it's really important to have that sense of collectivism and mutual support across a team. I think the second thing to say from a sort of strategic perspective is it's really important for the organisation that's doing this to create the space for community builders to do the work they need to do in the way they need to do it. And it does take a degree of bravery. When we started, everyone around us was starting to cut services as part of austerity. And we were inundated with requests from lots of partners and stakeholders Could community builders be neighbourhood health champions? Could community builders be lifestyle this? Could community builders? And my job, and my colleague Tracy Kabash's job, was the role of what's called the gapper. So that was basically our job, was to say no to all of those things. So at the beginning of the journey, it was quite difficult, as lots of other services and supports reduced or evaporated, and the requests came in for us to be doing all of their jobs. We had to say no to ensure that community builders could do the work that they were trained to do and funded to do, and not other roles. I think the other bit of learning is it takes time. It takes time to build relationships in a place, to build trust. And so the other key point is that community builders go into a neighbourhood without agenda. They're not there to try and get people to do things they want them to do. They're there to harness the passion and the energy of the people in that place to do what they care about. And I remember at the beginning of the journey, people used to say to me, what do community builders do? And I probably didn't help myself in terms of that gapper role when I said they don't do. They do lots of things, but the whole premise of it is that community builders are not doing for people, they are enabling the people to do for each other. So another key premise or philosophy within all of this is we believe everyone that we come in contact with is a potential contributor. So we don't look at people as beneficiaries or patients or service users or clients. We look at people as people, and we look to try and harness their strengths, their energy, their passion, and their time to do what they care about. And what's resulted from that philosophy and that way of working in community is that lots of people have done lots of things for each other and for themselves. When we designed the Aging Well programme, the two key words that came out after we did lots of engagement, lots of listening, and that's a really important principle. We always start by engaging and listening and building relationships. What we discovered was actually that people over 50 who were struggling, who had issues around social isolation and loneliness, often lacked that sense of value from within or from those around them, and often lacked a sense of purpose in their life. And the people that were flourishing in later life had those two things. So underneath all of the practice, that some of which we'll share with you today, was that key philosophy that how do we enable people to have that sense of value from within and from those around them, and have purpose in their life. So I think that's probably enough from me on some of the strategic elements, and I'm going to pass over to Nina to talk a little bit about how she's done it in her neighbourhood, and to share with you a story from an individual in her patch, just to sort of bring it alive. Over to you, Nina.
Thank you. Yes, I was just going to start off really just talking a little bit before I go on to the way I did it myself, just to quickly touch on the operational side as well. And to firstly say that with community building and asset-based community development, every single community is different and every community builder is different as well. So really there's no right and wrong way, but that we're using some of what I'm going to say is our guidelines really. So when we go off and start working in an area, or what we call in Torbay our patch, we all go there with absolutely no agenda. And in the first year of community building, we spend time in that first year getting to know our community. It's really important to build trust and relationships, but just as important for that community builder to be themselves. They can be themselves, they don't have to be formal, and just be natural. Something that we're all really pleased with when in that first year is when we find any connectors. Connectors are our ears and eyes, and a connector are those people in our communities, those ones that know lots of people. They know what's going on in their neighbourhood. They're usually very lively, friendly individuals, and they really care about where they live. They have no agenda, and they've got no want for power either. They just do their connecting because they absolutely love it. So then what we would do is, while we're getting to know our communities, we'll look for those hidden assets. We all have gifts or skills to share. And we often find those assets as when we've got to know a group of people. We might do a bit of asset mapping with communities, plotting what's already there on the map, finding out lots of different people, places, groups and buildings. So community builders do go where the energy is. They look for people that are passionate about change. And all this takes is time. It's important to work at the community's pace, and we try to never rush them. We let people know that they are leading this. It's their ideas and it's community-led. I believe that everyone has something to offer to improve the well-being of others. So how did I do it? As I said, every neighbourhood is different. I went into my community and knew I had to get to know lots of people, and I needed to gain build relationships, gain trust. So I spoke to people by the local shops, bus stops and on buses, and I knocked on many doors. I found being creative was really helpful. So I did things like a pop-up cafe. I had lots of conversations there. I decorated it with bunting and served tea and coffee in bone china cups and saucers, which looked a bit odd. So lots of people came to investigate to see what I was doing. So I spoke to people and I thought of creative ways of getting messages over about what they loved about where they lived, any ideas they had, what changes they used to make, they wanted to make. And I actually did things like I had some Lego bricks, more like Duplo, big enough for people to write their ideas, and they were actually building a wall of Duplo bricks, just all different ways of getting ideas. But at the end of the few weeks of doing this, I realised there was a really, really clear message that people simply felt that they didn't have just a simple, a safe space to meet. I met with very passionate volunteers soon after, and several of them approached some sanctuary housing members of staff because they realised that sanctuary housing had some empty offices in a row of shops in the middle of the estate. After a while, it took a little while, but sanctuary were really good, and they agreed to gift the office to the community. And the volunteers started to create a community cafe. That's that safe space that they wanted to use. And several months later, after upcycling furniture and changing the look of the office, making it more cosy and inviting, the Crafty Fox was born. It's now a registered charity, and it works closely with the local GP surgery. Both volunteers and visitors have made friends, and lots and lots of really, really meaningful relationships. And the cafe now is evolved into a community hub where workshops, support groups and skills are shared, and friendships have been made, and lots of support networks too, just to say a few. I'm just quickly going to go on now just to tell a story about a lady that I met. Fairly early on in my work, when I was doing a lot of door knocking, I knocked on the door one day and a lady called Mandy answered the door. Mandy had fairly recently moved into the area. She had to move in because she was fleeing domestic abuse, and she moved in from a city quite far away, so she had absolutely no friends at all. She didn't know anyone. She was feeling very down. She was very shy, very low in confidence, and she did tell me after several meetings that she was taking antidepressants because she was so low. I called back to see Mandy week after week and told her about some activities and groups that were going on, and eventually introduced Mandy to the community cafe. And she started volunteering. She made friends, and her support network grew. She started to gain in confidence, and she was volunteering more and more. Anyway, one day she came bursting into the cafe. It was absolutely full with people. And she just shouted out in a really jolly way, so happy, just telling everybody in one big shout, I don't take antidepressants anymore. I'm off them. And I was a little bit sort of shocked, but everybody in the cafe gave her a round of applause. Everyone clapped. And it was just such a lovely moment. Mandy has now moved on to actually owning her own business, and she shares a shop with one of her friends. And going forward, her life's been really, really successful, and she's now a much happier lady. Thank you.
God, it gets me every time. Sorry, just to gather myself, because I get a bit emotional when I hear our fantastic community builders talking about how the lives that people we work with are changing in such a dramatic and positive way. So I'm just going to share some headline statistics before we move into our breakout session. But first of all, just thought I'd share one slide just to bring it alive. This was this is the Crafty Fox Hub and Cafe that Nina referred to, and here are some of the volunteers. They're all residents from that local area, and they run it themselves. Nina doesn't run it for them, but she supports them. And it's become such a place in that local community for people to connect. And there's lots of other stories we could share of people who never came out, were never seen before, who are now integrated and active members of that network and hub. So I just want to share one or two key sort of bits of impact with you. So kind of, has this made any difference? All this lovely community work? Well, the answer is yes, significant difference. This is some headline statistics that it's a bit out of date now. So you could probably double some of these figures. This is over 2 years old now. But I guess just want to highlight some of the key impacts. So this one here, we call them citizen-led actions or activities. They're not associational community groups. They're not voluntary organizations. There's no constitution. They are basically citizens doing things that they care about, supported and enabled by our team of community builders, but not doing it for them. There are over 300 now, although some of them obviously have stood down in COVID. We're focusing now on trying to get them up and running again. There's some really quite impressive statistics. This is all done by questionnaires that was part of the lottery arrangements. So we're looking over time, every 6 months. So there's quite a lot of data behind these statistics. My favorite one is the one down the bottom here. So these are isolated, lonely older people who at the beginning didn't feel they had the ability to use their skills, experience, and passion to benefit their wider community. But after only 2 years, that doubled. A significant impact on people's reported feeling of loneliness, and we use a number of recognized national scales, including the UCLA, the loneliness scale, and the I can't even say it, de Jong, de Grievel, something or other. Anyway, they're all recognized national scales, and we've outperformed most of the projects across a whole range of initiatives in terms of getting to the people who are the most isolated and moving them further away from loneliness and isolation. 44% increase in valued friendship. A 32% reduction in visits to the GP, self-reported by the people. And a really impressive 59% improvement in people's sense of mental well-being. And we have other statistics that we could share with you. I will put a link to this. This is our learning document around community building. I saw in the chat there was a comment about community connectors. The one thing we don't do is go and identify people and then say, you're a community connector. We don't use our jargon when we're in community. They're not formal volunteers. they're a network of go-to people in any community, and we work with them in a very informal, sort of organic way, using them. It's a bit like pyramid selling in reverse. So they're a network of people that work with the community builder, but actually they're just doing what they do naturally. We've not recruited them as such. We've just identified them and worked with them. So they're not formal volunteers. They're just passionate people in the community that others go to. So this learning document, and I'll put the link in a moment. So here's the sort of idea or the concept. I mean, this is just a framework idea. So you have one community builder for a neighborhood area of somewhere between 8,000 to 10,000 people. In that, you've probably got 10% of those are isolated or vulnerable people, and you might be able to find something in the order of 100 connectors. But as people have said already, every patch is different. On our legacy page, which I'll share, there's lots of lovely stories, video clips, as well as learning documents. So please have a look after the session. Also in this document, we've captured some of our key bits of learning. And just to maybe highlight a couple, one of, I guess Nina said it much more eloquent than I, our learning is actually you do need a team of paid people, because other projects that have tried this in the past with a sort of volunteer-based approach, just like Nina's example of the lady who moved into Foxhole, people's lives change, you know, and so someone who's given lots and is volunteering then gets a job and moves on. So to keep the momentum going and the consistency of support and relationships, it's important to have a team that are paid and also a team that share and work together and lean on each other for support and skills. One of the other interesting bits of learning, just to highlight, is this one here. So one of the things that we've discovered is, yes, there are lots of groups in any area and across areas. We respect those groups, but we don't necessarily rely on them. What we're about is activating people. It's giving the people in a place the opportunity to gain their own sense of value and purpose, not necessarily to join something that exists already. It might be that community builders maybe want to say more about that in the skills session later. So there's a number of learnings here. These are the key headlines. I think just probably the last one just to focus on, it's really important to celebrate and to have fun. You know, this is not about service delivery per se. It's about connecting and engaging, building relationships and valuing each other in a place. So as I said, I'll put the link in the chat later on. But what we'd like to do now is to break out into two groups. And this is the time where we get to share together. So Matt, if you're able to split us off into two groups, we're all going to do a bit of sharing and then some reflection together. Welcome back, everyone. I hope that sharing something that's of personal significance to each of us with a group of people you've never met before is actually a very quick way of actually building a relationship with people. And I guess what we heard before was Nina talking about the importance of building relationships with people in a community and bringing yourself to that. So one of the things that our community builders have been really successful in is bringing themselves into relationship with people in that community. And that does require, you know, a community worker to share of themselves. And I guess the reflection from the group we were in was that actually, you know, everyone in the group shared something of very personal significance to them. And it created a bond within the group in quite a short space of time. So it was just to bring alive that there are lots of tools and techniques, and that's just one, that we can use to bring us into relationship with people. And that's when we manage to create positive change in a community or a place and with individuals in it. So we're going to now, I think, break out into. Did we get 21 people, Matt?
How many? Yeah, we've got 21 people at the moment. So you had probably just under 20 people in your actual rooms. Yeah, you would have had 19 of you together.
Okay, so what we'd like to do now is I think we're going to break into 3 groups. And between myself, Ursha, Marianne and Nina, we're going to take you through a game that we use in community. And it's probably worth acknowledging we didn't create this game. So thank you to Nurture Development who gave us the game to test and work with. It's called the Skills Game. And so we're going to have an interactive session in our breakout groups using the Skills Game. And the Skills Game is a way of actually facilitating a group of people in a community to have the confidence to do what it is that they wish to do. And often what I've heard community builders say is they spend a lot of time giving permission in community. Now, community builders have no authority to give anyone permission for anything. But it seems that actually people often think, oh, I don't think I could do this. Or the group don't think they've got the necessary skills to be able to take whatever action it is they want to take. So what the Skills Game shows you, and we'll go through it now, is actually that generally in any group of people, most of the things that you need are actually in the group. And it builds the confidence of a group of people to take positive action together. So, Matt, over to you. We're going to go off into 3 breakout groups for around 25 minutes, and then we'll just come back for some last minute reflections and sharing. So I hope that was A, fun, and B, hopefully sort of illuminating as one example of one technique that we use just to build the confidence of a group within the community. I don't know, we didn't put it on there actually, but I just love the fact that we've done this in reality, and just, I don't know whether it was covered or not, but you can create the list of things, the skills you need for whatever it is, and then just use the game with whatever the relevant skills are for whatever it is you want to try and achieve within a community group or activity. The one that I think is wonderful is we actually got a card that says drive a tank. And we run this in reality, and twice we've had a lady over the age of 80 who says, yes, I can drive a tank. I drove one in the war. So every time we do this, generally people say, you know, oh, maybe we could do 50, 60%. And every time you do the actual thing, it ends up over 90%. So it's a really useful tool. But the team use lots of other tools and techniques too. I think I've sort of slightly lost track of the timings, but have we got about 8 minutes left?
Yeah.
So rather than me talking anymore, I'm just going to open up the floor for comments, reflections, just whatever anyone wants to throw in.
I have a quick question. So with these kind of activities, you know, that like build people's confidence and like connect people, where do you find them exactly, or do you just make them up? Like, is there a place where you'd recommend to start looking? Or
some of them we've been, you know, kind of got from others. So our community builders have got a whole range of things in their toolkits. I don't know whether any of you want to answer this one rather than me. Anyone? Everyone's being really polite now. Where do you find it? Where do you get all the tools you use, community builders?
Shall I say something?
Go on then.
So basically, it could either come from something that we've heard from the community that they want or they're interested in, or we might be talking to somebody and they express an interest. I had one lady that's really hard for her to engage, and then after a series of conversations over a couple of months, she said, I'm really interested in books, and there used to be a book club here. And so we went around looking for local book clubs and realised there wasn't one, and we set that up but with her being the lead on that and me just supporting that. And so it's kind of, it can either be something that it's usually from what the community are asking us to do in the first instance.
So just an additional thing from me. So I hear a lot of people talk about Hilary Cottam. So a lot of people have heard of Hilary Cottam, Radical Help, lots of tools and techniques in that book, for example. I guess what we're using is sort of creative engagement tools. And so there are lots of publications out there on tools and techniques that you can use. Another one that we've used is yarn bombing. So this was actually Brixham Youth Inquiry Service who did this some time ago down in Brixham, where they had lots of the people connected to their setup who knitted lots of stuff. And then one night they went out and basically yarn bombed the whole of Brixham. And there were lots of fishes, little knitted fishes with a little Paddington sort of label on them. And the whole purpose of the yarn bombing was to get people's interest. And it just said, if you want to find out more, turn up here at this time on this date. And then what got created was what we, correct me if I'm wrong here, guys, an ideas fair. So it was basically, they were inviting people to come to an ideas fair. And so that's another technique is once you've gone out and connected, built relationships, you can actually then bring people together into a bigger event. Nina, you're going to correct me.
No, I'll go next after you, Simon.
Oh, right, okay. So the idea of the ideas fair is you can bring people together and then connect them in that space around the things that they're interested in. And that then helps stimulate some of the activities that then happen next. Nina.
Yeah, all I was going to say was the Community Builder team together now have sort of collected a lot of tools and resources for engagement. And some of those are obviously things that, like the cards, the game we've just done, the skills game, but also creative ways of collecting ideas at ideas fairs or just pop-ups. We've done things like wishing trees, where we have some sort of tree with labels and things that people can tie their ideas to a tree. And I mentioned the Duplo blocks earlier, that people were, I was finding them at car boots and stuff that I could use with some permanent markers, so people could write different ideas that they would like to see happen or bring along. There's been all sorts of things. There's been bunting, where people have actually, they've created bunting and gradually added to it with different ideas. So I'm sure other community builders have got other ones as well.
Oh, they're popping up now. So Yersha, then Marianne, go on.
A bit like the We Can game, a really simple way of doing it is with a ball of wool. So you hold a ball, you have a ball of wool, and you have a group of people, and I might say, can anyone help me with my computer? And someone says, I can, so I throw the ball to them, and then they ask for what they want help with, and they throw it to that person. So say there's a group of 10 people, you find how we all are able to help each other. So it's like we have what we need if we share what we have.
Very good.
That's a really simple, easy way of,
And it's really visible, isn't it?
Yeah, I was going to say, I think the ball of wool one is really good, because what happens above your, or in your eyesight, is you form a web, and that web is well, there you go, a web. It's a visual of the connections that you're making. So the ball of wool one is really effective.
I experienced that in a group therapy session. And actually, when one person tugs on their bit they're holding, it impacts on everyone else in the group. So it also visualizes and shows you that sense of connection between you. Marianne.
Yeah, just to quickly say that we are, at the moment, we are all getting together in groups of community builders, and we're sharing all of those tools and all of those resources together, all the things that we've tried and that have worked over the last 6 years. So yeah, my email is in the chat. So yeah, when we've got all that together and we're ready to share it all with you, yeah, email us and we'll let you know, and you'll have a whole library of things there that you can use then.
Thanks, Marianne.
Can I just ask, will that those resources and trainings, will they be free, or is your aim to charge for those resources?
Well, we've just, all of this has been free this week, which will be part of our training. So like this week has been like a whole week of free training, really. But now, because we are losing our lottery funding, obviously in March, we've already got an extra year just because of the pandemic. We need to start charging so we can carry on doing this. Yeah, so they will be charged for training packages, but there'll be a whole range on offer, different lengths.
So just to build on what Marianne said, I've put the link to our Aging Well legacy page. So the community building learning document, there's one there on our social prescribing ecosystem, which is the combination of community builders and our wellbeing coordinators in Age UK. Some very significant impact and cost savings in the health and care system, as well as improving lives. Some lovely videos and stories provided by David and Matt, our comms team. Also some really moving reflections from our wellbeing coordinator colleagues around working through lockdown, you know, because it's been difficult for all of us. So as Marianne said, at the moment, as part of Aging Well, we are disseminating our learning for free, but we have an aspiration, I think, for more places to do what we've done and to work with other places, but that's not on a free basis, unfortunately. But if anyone's interested, either make contact with Marianne or myself. We are in the process of developing a training, I think to use the jargon, prospectus. And we have started to run courses on a paid for base. So the course we've just run with you, we actually did for the NHS England Participation Network on a paid basis. But we're working on that, and it'll be ready in the next probably couple of months. We'll be able to offer sort of introductory sessions like the one we've done today, maybe more focused sessions around some of the other tools and techniques like asset mapping and, you know, engagement techniques. But actually, what we know from our own experience is this takes time. What we think would be really valuable, if we could find a place that had the resources and was keen to do it, was to walk with another place for a minimum of 2 years. Now, when I say walk with a place, we think the best way for people to learn the art is to come and shadow our community builders who've been doing it for some time and have learned, you know, by getting it wrong and checking with each other and trying it differently and all the rest of it. So if there is a place that's interested, and I guess for our own integrity, we don't want to do a kind of more substantive working with model with a place unless they've got resources to maintain their community building approach for a minimum of 2 years. Because we were asked recently by one area who said, oh, we've got some money for some community builders for 6 months. Our advice to them was don't do it. The worst thing you could do is to go into a community, start to build relationships and then bugger off, excuse my language. You would make things even worse, and you'd actually amplify that cynicism and that disengagement and apathy and all the other issues that you come across. And I think the final comment I want to make is about, and I just, well, first of all, just to acknowledge, you know, I'm the strategist, but I didn't do any of this. I get to talk about it. But actually, I really believe in it. I really believe in asset-based community development, and I really believe in our fantastic team of community builders who are actually doing it on the ground. When we recruited our team, what we were looking for was for people who are happy and strong. It's not about what experience they've got. And in fact, some people who come from a service background have found it very difficult to adapt. Not all, but some. Because it's not providing services to people, it's enabling the people to find the solutions themselves. So thank you to our happy and strong community builders. The last 12 months has been pretty challenging for all of us. But as we come out of lockdown and into whatever it's called, recovery, I call it living again. Very happy to share as much as we can as part of what we're learning through Aging Well. But if anyone else is interested in having further conversations, maybe contact Marianne in the first instance. We would love to grow this approach, because what we've actually seen is it really does change lives. But it's not a short fix. It's relational, it's conversational, and it needs time. So we think it's a 25-year program, and we're in year 7. So we hope to carry on with our community builders, if they've got the energy, for another at least 19 years. But I guess what we heard certainly in the breakout group I was in was actually this is hugely rewarding. You bring yourself into relationship with a place and you transform lives. And yeah, just final comment from me, I just feel hugely proud. So thank you all for coming along and experiencing this with us, and let us know if you want to talk more.